Hello, welcome to our fourth UBS pre-concert talk for the Bangor Symphony Orchestra's 128th season. My name is Renia Shterenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the BSO. Thanks so much for joining us today. I would like to thank the sponsors for this season's pre-concert talk series, UBS Argosy Wealth Management, and our Masterworks 4 concert supporter, Maine Community Foundation's Mimi Fund. Today, I will be talking to our very own Bangor Symphony Orchestra music director and conductor, Lucas Richman. We'll talk a little bit about the pieces on our upcoming program, March 10th, which include a short work by Mozart and a long work by Mahler. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Renia. Hi, everybody.
So shall we get started and move to our program, which includes Mozart and then Mahler?
Right, we've got Mozart's Masonic funeral music and Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 5, a powerful and dramatic work. I mean, they're both dramatic, but for different reasons. So let's get into it.
Great. All right.
So Mozart, as you can see, lived 1756 to 1791, and this piece he wrote when he was 29. The work is called the Masonic funeral music. Mozart belonged to the order of Freemasons, and a lot of his music ended up reflecting certain things that were in the Masonic order, specifically the symbolism of threes. If you know his opera, The Magic Flute, it was set in the key of E flat, which has 3 flats in it. And in the beginning, there are 3 cherubs. And there are various other ways that the number 3 figure in. So when he's writing in a key of 3 flats, it is especially profound. And every major key has its relative minor key. And in this case, C minor is the relative minor key. So 3 flats in the key of C minor. Now, what is C minor? We all of us have gone to a piano and played a major chord, a C major chord. But when we take that middle note and we make it just one step lower, it becomes a minor chord. And we associate that with sad. This is happy, sad, in a very simplistic sort of way. But our ears today are so much more jaded and accepting of the drama of this, just manipulating, changing one note from a step here or there. Today we accept everything, and we don't get the. Think of it this way: with visual artists who are taking the subtleties of color and putting color next to each other, like dramatically, if you put purple next to orange, and you get that vibrance, that real buzzing kind of feel. That's what it is.
Purple coffee cup here next to my orange thing. Oh, we could do that. Is that the shapes a little?
Exactly. So if you imagine that certain notes have a rub in an aural fashion, that's what the drama really became. And when we listen to this music from literally over 200 years ago, 250 years ago, if we can put ourselves in that mode of, okay, this is the first time that we're hearing this, it is outstandingly
it's shocking, right?
Absolutely.
Shocking, dramatic. People hadn't heard this before.
And a lot of Mozart's music is cast in a major key. His happier music is in D major and A major, keys that work well with string instruments because of the open strings. So when he writes in the key of a minor key, it is definitely an important moment. His C minor piano concerto, or his C minor mass, and in this case, the Masonic funeral music with 3 flats. And we have the
Yeah, shall we take a
first,
look at it? I have
yeah,
it
the
on
first page. This is Mozart's actual autograph.
manuscript.
This is
Yeah.
his the first page of the score, and you can see, interestingly, at the top of the score, if you look on the left, it says 2 violins, This is the first and second violin, and then under that is viola, and then we have 2 oboes, and then you've got your clarinets, and you've got it's hard to read what that is.
Horns,
Mozart.
right?
Oh, corno, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
corno. Yep.
horns. And he's got basset horns, and at the very bottom you got your basses, and interestingly, the cello, so the cellian bass, and then the contrabassoon.
Yeah.
So the score order is different from how we normally set up our traditional scores today. But if you notice, there are 3 flats in the key signature, and that is the key for signature for C minor. We start off with this very plaintive sound of the oboes, just playing these 2 notes, a C and an E flat, and it's immediately you're brought into this sighing sort of music, and it's so beautiful and heartfelt. This is sort of a march of sorts, and so it progresses, and it has a lot of flow as we move through the harmony. I just want to mention one thing, because the title of our concert is called From Darkness to Light. The idea of going from a minor chord, to a major chord, it's like turning on the light. After all kinds of darkness, sitting in this and suddenly the light comes on. And that's what we have in the very last bar. If you go to the next page, this is a piano reduction of the Masonic funeral music, and you see at the very, very end, the chords, the last few chords, have this, and it's so beautiful, and it just opens up hope. So with that, we move to the music of Gustav Mahler, and we've actually had a chance to do a couple of Mahler symphonies here in Bangor together. In my time, we've done the First Symphony and the Fourth Symphony.
Wow.
So Mahler wrote his first symphonies were. The very first symphony is a purely instrumental piece, and then his second, third, and fourth symphonies all have voice. He was very much involved in vocal music, and interestingly, he made his living as a conductor. We know him today as a composer because this is what was left to us historically. But he made his living as a conductor, and he wasn't known as a composer. He was trying to make his name as a composer, and people didn't understand his music, and he was also writing in longer and longer forms. A typical Mozart symphony might last 30 minutes. A Mahler symphony will be 70 minutes or an hour and a half. It's a much bigger canvas, and it's hard to wade through. With the second, third, and fourth symphonies, you've got vocal music, which is dependent on a text and in a way that kind of moves things forward. But when you're faced with an instrumental piece that is a piece that is just instruments and there's no storyline, like how can you follow it? it's very difficult to know what to do with that. You see that Mahler lived 1860 to 1911. In the last last decade of his life, towards the end, he was actually music director of the New York Philharmonic. He had been in a music director in Budapest, and he had been wanting to make his way into Vienna life, to be accepted as a conductor and a composer. You see that he was an Austrian Jewish composer, and that was definitely a barrier. So at a certain point in his life, he converted to Christianity to be accepted. But it still, he had a lot of people who were not accepting of Mahler. This Fifth Symphony comes at a time of great joy for him. He had been faced with a lot of very difficult things in his life. He had experienced much loss with the loss of his father, his mother, his siblings. I think there were, I want to say 12 siblings in his immediate family, and I think 7 of them passed along the way, which is like, it's devastating. Yeah. So much of his music is informed with that, the pang of loss. But in 1901, he was in the morning, he was conducting a concert that included Bruckner's Fifth Symphony. And then that evening, he conducted a performance of Mozart's Magic Flute. And that's a lot to do in one day. He went home and he had a massive heart hemorrhage. And it was a life-changing thing. It was, he had a weak heart for the rest of his life. But it was kind of a wake-up call to him. He would, from then on, really make an effort that in his summer he would not conduct, and he'd spend 3 months just composing. So he started working on his Fifth Symphony, and it was the beginning of it. The first 2 movements are very, very dark, and we'll get into that in just a second. I'll mention at that concert of the Bruckner, there was a young lady in the audience named Alma Schindler, and she later commented that he looked like a ghost, and he looked very ill. They didn't meet at that time. They actually met several months later, and fell in love. And Alma was a pianist and a wonderful composer in her own right. Mahler was entranced, and one of the things that he does in this symphony, he ends up writing a love letter to Alma. And probably the most famous piece that Mahler has left for us is his Adagietto from this symphony, the 4th movement, and it is actually a love letter to Alma. And they ended up getting married in 1902. So let's get into it a little bit. Sure. So Mahler was very influenced by the music of Wagner and Mozart and Beethoven. This Symphony Number 5 is technically in C sharp minor, but he also kind of poo-pooed that, and he didn't want it to be known as necessarily C sharp minor. And I'll explain why that is. While certain melodies live in C sharp minor, it's actually certain intervals that are more important to him than the actual key. And it ends up that the piece ends in the key of D, the glorious D major of celebration. You see that it's in 3 parts. I mentioned the 4th movement, and this is kind of unusual that there are actually 5 movements, but he conceived of the piece in 3 larger sections. The first part has the funeral march, and then the second movement, which has a lot of material that was introduced in the first movement. So they're really tied together, and he intends that the performance is done where you segue into the second movement, and you'll hear many of the melodies that we've already heard in the first movement. That first section takes about 25 minutes or so. And then he asks for us to take a little break, not a full intermission by any means. And then we get into the scherzo. And the scherzo is a wonderful piece, a lilting waltz with a dynamic horn solo in the middle of it. I'll talk about that in a bit. And the third section is this adagietto, the love letter to Alma, that segues into the brilliant rondo finale. At this time, Mahler was also studying the music of Bach, and this symphony shows evidence of that because it is the most contrapuntal piece that he wrote. It is filled with constant counterpoint and multi-layers of voices going this way and that way, and it's quite extraordinary. So Mahler, writing his Fifth Symphony, composers of the day had the specter of Beethoven weighing on them. After Beethoven had written his Ninth Symphony, it was very difficult for composers to take up a pen to write another symphony because they thought, what else can you say after Beethoven has written it? And it took a long time for Brahms to actually write his first symphony. But certainly, when Beethoven wrote his Fifth Symphony, it was a revolutionary moment. He was really pulling music out of the classical era and fully into the Romantic era. And it is in C minor with the three flats. And we can go to that next.
You need to pull that up? Yeah.
Yes. So this is the first page of Beethoven's very famous first Symphony number 5. Mm-hmm. And if you see that the violins, the first violins, the second violins, all the strings and the clarinets are playing 3 notes at one pitch, and then they descend. And those pitches are 3 Gs and an E flat. Now, on the face of it, it seems very mild, and we don't know, in fact, what key we're in, because that could be the key of E flat. It's in 3 flats. We could be in the key of E flat.
Oh.
It just sounds so wrong to our ears.
It does, yeah.
But back in the day, they didn't know. It could have been a happy bum 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 ba da da dum bum bim bum ba da da. You know, we don't know. And it's not until a few bars later that you get a tracing of the what's called an arpeggio of the C minor chord. When we have in the cello and the violas, second violins, you have the C and then E flat, and the violas have a G and the violins have a C. So we get our first full C minor chord. Now remember that idea. And then those 3 notes, I'll just mention, really kind of like the shot heard around the world. Fate knocking on the door. And just put this in your thinking process. It was also revolutionary because in the last movement, Beethoven introduces the trombones, and this is the first time in a major classical piece the trombones had been used in a symphony. Mm. They herald in the big blast of C major, and he goes from the darkness, this drama, from the C minor to the C major with trombones. So that idea of that falling third had to be in Mahler's head, that he's writing his own Fifth Symphony. And what does he do? Next slide. He starts off his piece with a triplet, 3 notes, and it's as if he's bowing to legacy of Beethoven. But what is he going to do? Is he going to go? I mean, he's not going to do that. He doesn't go down, like deciding which way to go, and he decides to go up. And then, okay, he decided that, and he traces, like Beethoven does, that whole C minor chord. And this is done with the brilliant trumpet solo, iconic solo. But here's the thing. We don't know that we're in C sharp minor. Just like we didn't know if we were in E flat major or C minor before. We don't know, because this could be... It could be A major. Instead, we find out that we're in C sharp minor. Those of you who don't read music, I apologize if I'm getting into the weeds, but I just also find it fascinating. Renia, if you could take your mouse and go to the second system and write that second bar right at the end, the double forte, right there is A major. So the first explosion of sound, in fact, is not C sharp minor, it's A major. Which is the dominant of the D major that we're going to be getting at the very end of the symphony. So what he's doing is he's playing around with the idea of minor thirds and then major thirds, because later on, what is this? The E sharp is also translated enharmonically to an F. Or D flat major. So again, sorry about the weeds. The trumpet heralds in this march, and we have a beautiful, beautiful melody that begins. You see at the very, very bottom of the page with the violins, and the march begins at that point. And it is Mahler doesn't hold anything back with it in terms of passion, and with his music, you simply need to just let yourself go as you're listening to it, not look at your watch. It's a whole other, it's Mahler time, and just go for the ride, because he, like Bach would write these melodies that would just keep on spinning and spinning and spinning. And Mahler does that with his own harmonic language and melodies, where they just keep on traveling. And he takes us on this incredible journey. And he ends up, if you go to the next slide, he ends up at the end of the first movement with a C sharp at the bottom, the big plunk. And then the next notes are in with the orchestra, and that's A minor. And I want to mention that particularly because is the difference between the A minor and A major, where we have that C sharp. Just to keep that in mind, the A and the C. So the form basically of the first movement is that it's slow, fast, slow. And the second movement, which is the partner to the first movement, is fast, slow, fast. And as a structure, it's just at the time when this first was heard, people thought it was absolutely unwieldy, but it has become to be one of those, like, the greatest indications of genius in his construction. So we go through this entire large first section, and then we come to the third movement, which is a waltz of sorts, which begins with a big burst of sound with the horn section. And it has this lilting feel to it. And it's what's known as a Ländler waltz. It's a very folky gesture, and it is completely in a completely different vein from the first two movements of tragedy. Here he is absolutely joyous, abundant joy. He's in love, and yet his angst and his pain still manages to find its way into the exuberant joy. But how, too much honey, which is not a good thing, right? Like you can't enjoy the joy if you don't know the pain. You don't understand it as well. And in the middle of this, as the trumpet was iconic in the first movement, the horn solo, French horn, is featured in a huge way in this piece. You'll hear the French horn throughout, and in the two large sections has a very mournful, rhapsodic, slower portion. I guess if you wanted to call it in the traditional sense of the third movement of a symphony, you would have your minuet and the trio, and it's the relief from the minuet, and that's what the horn does. It's the contrasting section, but it's done in a minor key, and then we keep on coming back to this beautiful lilting Ländler waltz. It itself is about 18 minutes long. It's a huge piece. Now, I mentioned that relationship of the C and the A, particularly because in my study of this, I thought the notes coming up for the adagietto, don't switch the slide just yet. The adagietto starts off with a C note, and the harp, the C and the A, and the violins do an upward scale. And that idea of the A and the C, and you haven't quite determined, are you in minor? Are you in A minor? Or are you in F major? We don't know. And Mahler clearly knew the music of Beethoven, as well Wagner and everything. He did many performances of Wagner's music, including one of the first. He did full performances of The Ring and all kinds of things. But Beethoven, he knew. And go to the next slide. This just kind of hit me as I was thinking about this. If you look at this, this is one of Beethoven's string quartets, the Rasmussen String Quartet, Opus 59, number 1. And it is an ambiguous opening. We don't know what key we're in. The second violin and viola are playing this repeated sound, and the cello plays, and you could be in a minor. It could be minor. We don't know. It turns out that we're actually in F major. But I thought of this, oh my goodness, because if you go to the next slide, the opening of Mahler's Adagietto has the same notes. It's the same notes. It just transposed where the harp is going lower and the violins have the tune on top. This is the love letter that Gustav wrote for Alma, and apparently he sent it to her without without any words, and he just sent this and because of their understanding of music and the things that they probably had discussed about music, she knew that this was a love letter. It was meant for her, and she said, "Oh yes, he must come." So, my question is, did he send his original manuscript to her? Like, how did it could have gotten lost? I mean,
Yeah.
they don't. We know this story about him sending the manuscript, but we don't think about the practicalities of. Oh man, I hope he made a copy. um, this piece, a lot of people know because Leonard Bernstein conducted it at the funeral for Robert F. Kennedy. It's also featured in the movie Death in Venice. And because of those two particular um, instances, it people think of this as being a mournful a piece about death, but in fact, it is a love letter. And often, when it's played just by itself, it might be stretched out. Bernstein's performance takes about 12 minutes long. Um, in the context of the larger piece, though, if one pulls it apart and stretches so much, you actually lose the architecture of the piece because it becomes too much of a focal point and not a bridge to the finale in a way. So it's up to me to negotiate the arc of the larger work and how this fits in, knowing that it's a love letter. And scholars have said as such, it shouldn't be dragged out and pushed and pulled and some. Not to say that I'm not going to do, make music, make the beautiful music that's there, and it will not be rushed by any means. But it also should not be something that is so a languid affair. One of the things to point out, if you could go to those rising notes, Renia, in the first couple, the idea of that the E resolving up to the F. This is all about resolution. The E going up to the F, and then the notes coming down, accented passing notes. So everything he winds up each of his phrases with a compelling need for the note to go one way up or down, and that is one of the ways that he creates an incredible forward motion even in this very, very, very slow music. It's absolutely stunning, and one of my favorite pieces. And what is also remarkable is that this movement stands out because it is scored for just string orchestra and harp. So the large forces that we had, can you flip back to, do you have the orchestration
Yeah.
up there? Yeah, to the orchestration page.
Sure. Just give me.
Just so we can see how large, we've got a huge crew on stage.
Yep,
So
here we
so
go.
we'll just talk about that for a second. We've got 4 flutes, 3 oboes, 3 clarinets, 3 bassoons with contrabassoon, and with the clarinets, I mean, we've got D clarinet and bass clarinet, English horn, and the oboes, and then we have 6 horns, plus an assistant, 4 trumpets, 3 trombones, tuba, timpani, plus 4 percussionists, harp and strings. And in the percussion, we have snare drum, triangle, tam-tam, glockenspiel, a whip, a cymbal, bass drum and suspended cymbal, and bass drum. And so there's a lot of there are a lot of instruments on stage.
A lot of artillery on stage. Yeah, it's a really big orchestra. I think anytime you have more than 4 or 5 horns, when you reach 6, and as you said, there's an assistant, there's going to be 7 French horns on stage.
Yes.
It's going to be big.
Yeah, and the fact that you can go forward to the Adagietto. The fact that he uses a string orchestra and harp, it brings our focus down so incredibly to the bare essentials of just telling this poignant story, this love story. Um, and Mahler's music, it's fascinating because he's not using all of those people all the time. Everybody's not playing all the time. He really writes chamber music, and as you're listening to this piece, you'll become aware that it might be that the oboe is playing with a solo viola, and there's a violin, and there's a trumpet, and it's these different groups of instruments that are playing together, and then it turns into something else, and then it comes together with the full forces. So he's really so adept in using his knowledge of orchestration, um, uh, and the pacing of the piece to create those pillars in the music where everything comes together. And in fact, there's a big blast of sound at the end um, of the second movement. Sorry, this is my score.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a big
it's a
piece.
big score, yeah. Well, the
Uh,
piece is almost 70 minutes long
yes.
and
Um,
performed without pause. So,
so it's in the um, it's actually in the end of the second movement that we get. Yeah. Um, just confirm. Sorry, dead radio time. Yeah, it is in the second movement. My mind.
Lucas, could that be why he asks for a pause between the second movement and the third movement, or part one and part two, because it ends so big? And then, do you think he maybe wants to just clear the air for a few seconds? You mentioned earlier there's like a short
Yes.
rest,
Well,
not an intermission, but a rest.
no, absolutely. You need a break. I mentioned what I was looking for specifically is that we get when I was talking about all the forces coming together at the end of towards the end of the second movement, there's a blast of D major, and we think, we've gotten there, and it's triumphant, and then it goes away. But it's a taste of what's to come, um, and he builds up to that point over 20 minutes of music to get to that point where just the heavens open up and it's extraordinary, and then it goes away, and then it peters out. And then, yes, we do need time to just Mahler's understanding of space and breath. He says that there should be a long pause there, because he knows that we need, as an audience, as a listener, we need time to just digest a little bit and sit with the sounds that we've just heard. The remarkable thing about music is that it lives in the past. The second a note is articulated, it becomes a memory. It's not like a painting. We can keep on looking at a painting. We can't keep on hearing the music because the time passes and we're onto something else. So all we have once it's done is to think about the memory of it and the impact that it had on us emotionally and physically. So what is fascinating here with the adagietto is that we have the final resolution takes us to that A, and that's defined as the third of the chord. And we finally, we do this. And then the horn plays that note, that same note, up an octave. And the violin's still lingering in the past. And this is why I mentioned the timing of the history of our memory of the past. The horn is actually forward looking, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the violins are backward looking. they're still in F major land, but we only hear that one note. And the horn, and if you go to the next section, next page.
Next page.
Yeah, please. So the horn plays that first note, the violins play, and then the horn does, and the bassoon, bum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, bum, bim, ba-da-dum. And suddenly that A is now the fifth of the chord of D major. It's no longer, it's D major. And he's taken us out of that love poem into this land of this beautiful folklore, and even if you don't read music, you could see, like, go down to, if you just take your mouse, Renia, and just go to the fifth, right around there, that around the fifth line, and you see that if you go to the, trace the top line of that fifth system, one system, yeah, just go slowly. So that, now go to the second line in there, in that same passage. Yeah, so there's other things that are happening. This is like a conversation that's going on, and then go to the third line in the. So you have those notes, and then you have those people coming in. So there's so much happening all at the same time, and it's staggering. It's like a conversation of a huge crowd, and bits and pieces stand out every now and then, and sometimes it's just he wants the cumulative whole to resonate together. Quite an extraordinary work, astounding piece. For the orchestra, it is a feat. It is a physical piece, and I know that our musicians have been they've been aware of this on on the docket for quite a while, and it's been one of those things that, okay, the Mahler's coming up. I have to get in shape.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, stay in shape, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've played Mahler symphonies.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and to play, for 70 minutes.
Yeah, you literally don't put your instrument down as a string player. I mean, you
Right.
mentioned that fourth movement is all strings all the time, and those string players have been going from the first minute. And yeah, the horns and the percussion and everybody else can just like sit there and listen to the beautiful music. But it is, you have to be in shape. When I was a teacher, I used to tell my students, we are small muscle athletes. We need to make sure that what we do stays in shape so that when we have to sit on stage for 70 minutes, it's, yeah. And you're so compelled to do your absolute, like, just to play at the top level of, you bring your A game, and it is quite a long haul, but so worth it, right? The being able to go through the emotions and the physical aspect of it is, it's really it's a true art form. You're right, it lives in the moment, and it's different from a recording too, because when you're in the audience, you can hear the length of pauses between movements that you talk about, the discretion of you, Lucas, the conductor, like how long are you going to give that audience to digest that sound before you move them into the next, sound world that they're going to be participating in. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear it.
And just to circle back on the whole you can go out of the slideshow.
Okay.
The idea of from darkness to light. I just want to reiterate and circle back on it, because there is such a transformation over time, and he keeps on giving us little pockets of hope and like like we're gonna get there, we're not there yet, we're gonna get there, no, we're not there yet. But starting in this very, very dark and heartrending C sharp minor, and finally we get to D major at the end, and it opens us up. It is there, and our bodies respond to pitch, certain pitches in a big way. There's because if you think about music, it is the disturbance of air with sound waves,
Mhm.
um, and there's a resonation that hits us in different ways. The combination of a D, F sharp, and A is very different from D flat, F, and A flat. I
Mhm.
mean, it feels completely different on a visceral way. Um, uh, so I don't think it's not uh, a mystery as to why so many composers wrote pieces in D major for celebrations, because it just there's a brilliance to it, um, and I'm very excited about this. We're gonna have a great time.
Yeah, the orchestra is excited too. I can tell you they're really looking forward to it. Every time I talk to one of the musicians, they're all they're talking about is Mahler, 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 Mahler. So it's great. I think they're very excited. Um, Let me wrap us up here with um, just a few ending notes for our audience. We will be releasing this as a digital concert release. It'll be available starting March 13th through March 27th. The pre-sale tickets to the digital release of the concert are now available. They're $10, and you can visit our website for tickets. That's bangorsymphony.org. This concert will also be live broadcast on Maine Public Classical. So the recording that we capture on March 10th will be on the radio. So our live concerts are professionally recorded. This one will be broadcast on April 3rd at 8 p.m. on your local public radio station. And then I would just like to thank everyone who's watching for joining us. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank once again Argosy Wealth Management for their sponsorship of these pre-concert talks. This one, Mahler's Fifth from Darkness to Light, and our concert supporter, the Maine Community Foundation's Mimi Fund. Can't do it without you guys, so thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you all soon.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday, March 10th.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you.